So a lot of these creators vouching for semen retention make it seem like it's the most empowering thing ever. And it is, but there are some caveats. So if you're embarking on this journey, here are some things to be aware of. Now, I've been on semen retention for a year now, just over a year. And what I can say is that yes, you will find your power, but it won't be as magical as you think it is. A lot of times before we really are forced to practice the discipline it takes to be on SR for an extended period of time, we assume that it's going to be kind of like this hero's quest, like, oh, I'm going to fight the inner demons of blah, blah, blah. But really, it's just normal life. You're still going through normal life. You just don't have that same form of release. And the thing about SR is that fapping is only going to make it worse. Watching corn and fapping will make it worse because when you're practicing SR, before you could watch one video and just immediately release, be on and done. When you are determined to practice SR, if you goon or fap or watch corn, you can be going at it for a long time because that dopamine in your brain is going to get triggered and start cascading. And it's going to be seeking the release of serotonin and prolactin that comes from coming. And so if you are practicing SR, especially if you've been on it for a while, and you cave and you start watching corn, you could be binging for hours, just hours, because all of a sudden that animal instinct in you as a man gets possessed. And suddenly you are determined, your subconscious is determined to come, even though consciously you're like, no, I promised myself I wasn't going to do that. I'm not going to release. I'm not going to release all that prolactin into my system. I'm going to build up my testosterone and blah, blah, blah. Okay, dopamine's still a different chemical. Dopamine still has its own urges. Your primal brain still takes over. So you're going to give, if you have been watching that stuff as long as I have. I first started watching corn when I was 17, and this was in 2007. So back then, the internet was a different place. It was all these 30-second to 1-minute clips, really badly pixelated, and I was in high school at the time, and that's when I first started watching that stuff. And then the videos started getting full length about the time I was in college. And I was also prescribed Adderall, so I had an excuse to just be up all night watching that stuff. I do finish my homework, and then I still have a bunch of Adderall in my system, and I would browse corn. And so my brain's been hooked on that stuff for a long time. And during my SR journey for the last year, I definitely partook in corn more times than I wanted to. And that stuff will hook you in, and it'll be this battle of trying not to release while trying to close out the browsers and do something else. But it's nearly impossible if your brain is circuited like that. And just recently, and maybe it has something to do with the solar flares and the power that comes with that, but recently when I give in and I pop up a corn site, maybe I've convinced my brain or something, but like it doesn't do anything for me. It almost like, this is a weird way to put it, but it looks like plastic. It all looks like plastic to me. It doesn't even look real. Like my brain has pretty much been desexualized now. And there is still sort of a void of dopamine because I'm not seeing a woman in real life, which that's another thing I suggest. I suggest seeing a woman in real life, but there's kind of just this void of expectation now. So when I do make the mistake of looking up a corn browser really quick and just searching through the little thumbnails, I don't feel anything. I don't feel any compulsion. The allure of it is completely gone. It's just not there anymore, which is a good thing. Which is a good thing. It feels good to feel that way. Just know it's not like this glorious, you know, if I was living in a city and I had the potential to date, maybe it would be better. But right now, my motive is to finish my novel and have the full breadth of my, I guess, conscious parts in order to write that novel. And SR does help me with that. Another thing to be wary for when you're practicing SR for a long period of time is your shadow. Now, in spiritual circles, your shadow is sort of the unconscious parts of you. And in modern society, a lot of times a man's shadow is these very sexual, primal parts that fantasize about degrading women and doing all this different stuff, practicing all these different sexual acts or whatever. And it's very much this intrinsic shadow in each and every man that has descended from the times when we went on Viking raids and raided each other and took war spoils. And I know that sounds like a stupid excuse, but that's real stuff. Like for most of human history, a lot of genes were passed on through conquest. I mean, isn't it like a fraction of everyone on Earth is the descendant of Genghis Khan or something? Like something ridiculous like that. So this is a thing that we've sort of forgotten in modern society. And it's a shadow that lies in each and every man. And you're going to be faced with that head on when you practice SR. Because when you can't release easily, you're going to feel it. Here's the caveat. If you have decided not to release and you are not the kind of man who can easily get some just from their normal life. So if you don't have a lot of game or you don't have a big social circle, if you're the kind of man that the average woman just swipes the other way on Tinder, doesn't pay attention to, you're going to be confronted with this aggression, with this compulsion to dominate and conquer that you've probably been suppressing your entire life. And if you're in a certain environment, like up until recently, I was a correctional officer. So I would have these sudden, like, aggressive tendencies to get into fights and all that sort of stuff at my place of work, which wasn't good because I was surrounded by murderers, like people who could just beat my ass or hurt me even worse, which isn't a good place to blow up at, especially when you want to appear like a role model to these people. The whole point of being a correctional officer is to appear as someone who's collected. And on SR, all of these suppressed emotions came up, all of this suppressed aggression, desire to dominate, desire to assert authority, because genetically, that's the kind of stuff that got a man laid in the past. The higher up he was in the hierarchy of the tribe, the more potential he had to pass on his genes. And so all this stuff will come up. And depending on your environment, whether you were in a correctional setting like me, or whether maybe you live in the hood where people are just generally more aggressive, SR can actually get you killed. I'm going to say it right now. SR can get you killed. If you're in a more civilized, polite environment, it's not as bad, but you're still going to have those things coming up. So that's another thing to watch out for. And then in general, the pros have been increased So here's the thing. You get bursts of creativity and insight and spiritual just alchemization that just blows your mind. I get downloads now on SR that are so deep that when I'm getting them, I wouldn't trade them for anything. It makes it all worth it. But these are also interspersed with dead periods where just I feel like nothing, where just there's this void. And to be honest, upon reflection, the void is better than that feeling of being flooded with prolactin and being super low dopamine because I just released. However, the void is also very uncomfortable if you're not used to tolerating it. So, the longer you go on SR, the more you'll learn to tolerate it, but it gets better over time. Now, a lot of people say it ends after a month or two. I'm here to say it takes about a year. If you've been fapping as long as I have, I'm 34 and I've been fapping since I was 17, then it takes about a year to fully reset your brain. And I would say, considering just recently, I feel no compulsion to watch corn anymore. Yeah, it took about exactly a year to reset my brain. For others, for people who are younger and just starting this journey, it might take you less time. And ultimately, another pro I have noticed is that I build muscle more easily. I get more of a V figure to my frame and more, I guess you could say, meat in my face. Easier. Like, I don't even work out that much. I do weightless squats and push ups about twice a week, about 4 sets of them. Not very much. But I look way more masculine and I'm in way more shape than I was back when I was in high school or college and fapping all the time, but lifting almost every day. It makes no scientific sense other than the fact that I'm holding more testosterone in my system and not flooding it with prolactin from all those releases. So that's definitely a plus if you want to improve your masculine physique, if you want to improve your voice tone, all that stuff. Also, when you're not releasing, it keeps your adenosine receptors more intact. And your adenosine receptors just make you a more stable person. They stabilize your energy system, essentially. I'm not a scientist, so, but all this stuff is a thing. I'm not explaining it very well. There's not a lot more I have to say other than it's your choice. You have to take the situation in regards to whether you think your environment is safe enough to do it or not. Because I like to say every man should do it, but I also understand some people are in situations and may not be ready for it because the compulsions you feel under SR are no joke. I quit my job without a backup plan under SR. When I was working long hours at the prison and writing my novel and trying to be a spiritual guru on TikTok, I knew I had to practice SR. I knew I couldn't release. It was just this divine inspiration I got. However, because I was working all those hours and trying to accomplish these different goals, there were times when I almost did. Times where I didn't get any sleep and I was about to go into possibly a 16-hour shift around high risk individuals. And I just wanted to blow that stress off. And I almost did. And the pressure, it was like a pressure cooker. And the pressure got so intense that randomly this last November, I quit without a backup plan. I just didn't show up for a few days. And then when they told me I needed a doctor's note to show up, I told them I was quitting. And SR was responsible for that. I quit my job because of SR. So just know, but I had a huge nest egg saved up. Like, it's been months and I'm still chilling. So just know, if you're going on this journey, depending on your situation, it could put you in a bad situation because your emotions are going to switch like this. Your compulsions are going to switch like this. You might do reckless things on SR, just like the Vikings used to just raid random Anglo-Saxon villages, sail across the ocean in hopes of finding some war spoils they could start a family with. You're going to do reckless things like that as a man. So just be wary of that. Other than that, yeah, you should do it. You should do it. You only live one life, and you shouldn't live it like a dopamine depleted, prolactin flooded sheep. You should be a wolf. As a man in this life, you should be a wolf. Hope this helped.